Hi, I'm Jeff Dixon. Welcome to Seriously, where we look at a simple fact and ask the question, serious? This is what happened? Here's your fact. William Shatner is perhaps the most famous person featured in the horror film classic Halloween. Seriously? See, some of you, immediately when I say Halloween, you think Michael Myers, you think The Mask, you know, he just can't be killed, you think of all the sequels, and then you think to yourself, wait a minute, William Shatner wasn't in any of the Halloween films. How could he be the most famous person in the series? Glad you asked. See, because the origin behind the bright white mask used by Michael Myers in Halloween is interesting. The iconic mask has made Michael Myers one of the most memorable villains in film history, hiding behind the expressionless facade. Took all sense of humanity out of the man, which is often referred to and was called in the credits the Shape. Long before he had a name, Michael Myers, he was just simply called the Shape. See, Michael Myers first acquired the white mask in the 1978 film Halloween after he escaped from Smith's Grove Sanitarium. He stole a few items from a local hardware store, including the Halloween mask. The white mask became the face of the franchise. Michael wore a version of the original mask in all the installments of the franchise, with the exception of Halloween 3, The Season of the Witch, which didn't feature Michael Myers at all, which I don't even know why it's a Halloween film, but that's a whole different thing. Had nothing to do with it, so the mask is not in the third. When Halloween, the film, the original one, went into production, the crew had a dismal $300,000 budget to work with. I mean, seriously. It became one of the biggest selling films of all time in the horror industry. It revolutionized horror films. And the budget was, well, next to nothing for the John Carpenter film. Because they had very little budget, this caused the props and costume department to embark on the daunting task of developing Michael Myers' frightening appearance. So director John Carpenter hired Tommy Lee Wallace as the production designer. And not knowing what to do, and not knowing what to do to create this Michael Myers character, Wallace ended up buying a William Shatner Star Trek mask at a costume shop for $2. I'll say that again. He bought a William Shatner Star Trek mask from a costume shop for under $2. To remove the human element of the mask, Wallace took a knife and widened the eye holes just a little bit, got rid of the sideburns and distinctive eyebrows. The mask was then spray painted white, transforming it into the emotionless figure that fans know so well. The William Shatner mask was chosen because his features weren't very prominent. But it wasn't the crew's only option, because the Shatner mask was one of a number of masks that were looked at. Before deciding on Shatner, Wallace considered using an Emmett Kelly clown mask with frizzy red hair. This was meant to connect Michael Myers to murdering his sister Judith while wearing a clown costume as a kid. They decided that wasn't going to work. They also looked at a Mr. Spock mask, but they decided that the pointy ears just weren't going to work, and they just couldn't figure out a way to hide them. And then there was the mask of former U.S. President Richard Nixon. Using the likeliness of a president for a serial killer never seemed like a good idea to the cast and crew, and no one really got on page with that. And so, it was the Shatner mask. Some versions of Michael's mask were highly criticized during the later franchise installments. The criticism began with Halloween 4, when a mask with more distinctive pursed lips were used. The mask was supposed to be the same in Halloween 5. But the hairstyle that was attached to that mask gave Michael an entirely different look. Viewers also claimed that the mask looked cheap and was inferior to earlier versions. The production team got back on track after that, and the sequels continued to take their inspiration from the 1978 William Shatner mask. And Halloween decided to stay with the basics and stay with the look that had made him famous. Interestingly enough, that look was William Shatner. And so, when you see the terror on the screen of Michael Myers in Halloween, take just a moment and look close at the mask. Expressionless, nondescript, maybe a little bit boring. And there you have the William Shatner mask. So who knew William Shatner would play such a prominent role in the Halloween series? I'm not sure if he likes that designation or not. I'm not sure whether or not he's proud of that. After all, it was just a mask. But at the end of the day, that Star Trek mask, bought for $2, became iconic in the world of horror films. Seriously. And in our lives, we can learn some lessons from that. First, the things that cost the most sometimes aren't the things that endure. A $2 mask certainly doesn't seem like it's going to become a horror movie icon, and yet it does. And sometimes, to solve a problem, you need to think outside the box. In your life, there are moments where you're going to have to learn to think outside the box. And at the end of the day, never underestimate the power, the staying power of the simplest things making the biggest impact. And so, William Shatner's $2 mask changes horror film history. Seriously. And today, that means that when you go out into the world, hopefully you won't be living a horror film. But what you will be doing is changing the lives of those around you with some simple things. Not complicated, simple things. And believe it or not, those simple things will last a lifetime. Seriously. I look forward to joining you in our next episode.